The car pulled up to Grandma Rose's house. It was small and white with a big porch swing. Mom said it would be a good summer, a quiet summer. I thought it would be a long summer, a boring summer. My friends were going to the beach, they were going to concerts. I was going to Grandma's, where the biggest event was the weekly trip to the grocery store. I sighed a big, loud sigh. Mom gave me a look. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk. It felt heavy, filled with books I probably wouldn't read and clothes for a summer I didn't want. I waved a weak goodbye as the car drove away, leaving me on the sidewalk with my grandma, who smelled like lavender and baked bread. Grandma Rose smiled. Her smile was soft like her sweaters. She gave me a hug that lasted a little too long. "Welcome, sweetie," she said. "I've made your favorite lemon cookies." The house was just as I remembered. Quiet, full of old furniture covered in plastic. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Tick-tock, tick-tock. It was the sound of my summer slowing down. Every day felt the same. We watered her garden. We watched old black and white movies. We baked. It was nice, I guess. But it was also slow. So slow. I missed the noise of my life back home. The music, my friends laughing, the city sounds. Here the only sound was the ticking clock and the whisper of the wind in the trees. One rainy Tuesday, I was bored. Really bored. I had read all my books. I had scrolled through my phone until there was nothing new to see. Grandma was napping. I decided to explore. The house wasn't big, but there was one place I had never been. The attic. A small door in the ceiling of the hallway, a string hanging down. I pulled it and a set of creaky wooden stairs unfolded. The air that came down smelled old, like dust and forgotten things, like secrets. I felt a little shiver of excitement. It was the first real feeling I had all summer. I climbed the stairs, step by creaky step, into the dim, dusty light. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten memories, packed away under thick layers of dust. Old chairs, stacks of magazines, and boxes were everywhere. I moved carefully, trying not to sneeze. In a dark corner behind a stack of old photo albums, I saw it. A small, dark green trunk. It wasn't like the other cardboard boxes. It was sturdy, with leather straps and a rusty metal lock. It looked important, like it was hiding something. My heart beat a little faster. I knelt down and wiped the dust off the top. There was no key. I wiggled the latch, back and forth. With a loud click, the old lock sprang open. The summer of sighs was about to change. I lifted the heavy lid of the trunk. A faint smell of old perfume and paper filled the air. Inside, it was like a time capsule. On top lay a pile of colorful wigs, a fire engine red bob, a sleek black pixie cut, a wild curly blonde one. They were beautiful and strange. Who was this person? Not the Grandma Rose I knew, with her neat gray bun. I reached in and pulled out a wig. It was soft. I laughed, imagining my grandma in a bright red wig. It seemed impossible. Beneath the wigs, there was a small stack of passports. I opened the top one. The photo showed a young woman with serious eyes and a sharp haircut. It was Grandma, but it wasn't. This woman looked bold, fearless. I dug deeper into the trunk. My fingers found a bundle of letters, all tied together with a faded blue ribbon. The paper was thin and old. The ink was a little blurry in some places. I carefully untied the ribbon and unfolded the top letter. The date said 1965. It was from a man named Marcus. He wrote about smoky jazz clubs in Chicago. He wrote about music that made your soul stir. He called my grandma Rosie Blue. He said her voice was like honey and thunder. Rosie Blue, my grandma who hummed quietly while she baked, was a singer, a jazz singer. I read another letter and another. They painted a picture of a life I could not imagine. The letters spoke of late nights and loud music, of cities I had only read about in books. Paris, New Orleans, New York. Each letter was a piece of a puzzle of a woman I didn't know, a woman who traveled the world, a woman who sang her heart out on dimly lit stages. I found a small velvet bag. Inside were old ticket stubs. The Blue Note Club presents Rosie Blue and the Midnight Trio. The name was there in print. It was real. This wasn't a story. This was her life. My quiet, gentle grandma had another name, another world. I sat there on the dusty floor of the attic, surrounded by the ghosts of her past. I felt a mix of shock and wonder. My whole view of my grandma was cracking open. She wasn't just the lady who made the best cookies. She was Rosie Blue, a singer, a traveler, an adventurer. I picked up another passport photo. In this one, she was wearing the blonde wig. Her expression was different, determined. I looked at the name on the passport. It wasn't Rose. It was something else entirely. It was a secret on top of a secret. I gathered up a few letters and one of the passports. I closed the trunk, leaving the wigs behind for now. I had to know more. I went downstairs, my mind racing, my heart full of questions for the sleeping woman who was so much more than I ever knew. I found Grandma in the kitchen sipping tea. The rain had stopped. Sunlight streamed through the window. I put the letter and the passport on the table. She looked at them. Then she looked at me. A slow smile spread across her face. It was a different kind of smile, not just soft. It was knowing. "So," she said, her voice a low hum, "you found Rosie Blue." She picked up the passport, "And you found her friend Diane." She told me everything. In the 1960s, she wasn't just singing jazz. She was part of something bigger, the civil rights movement. Singing was her joy, but fighting for justice was her purpose. Her music was a message. She told me about the wigs and the different names. She was an undercover activist. Sometimes she was Rosie Blue, the singer who could pack a club with her voice. Her songs carried coded messages for other activists. She sang about freedom and hope right in front of people who didn't want to hear it. Other times she was Diane, a quiet student who helped organize marches and sit-ins. The wigs were her disguise. They helped her move between two worlds. One night she would be on stage in a sparkly dress. The next day she would be handing out flyers, her hair hidden under a simple scarf. She was a chameleon, a quiet warrior. She laughed as she told me a story, a funny one. One time in Alabama, a police officer came to the club where she was singing. He was looking for an activist who had been at a protest earlier that day. He was looking for a woman with short black hair. My grandma was on stage wearing the big blonde curly wig. She just smiled at him and started singing a slow, sad song. He stayed for the whole set. He even clapped. He never knew he was standing 10 feet away from the woman he was searching for. Sometimes, Grandma said with a wink, the best place to hide is right in plain sight. I laughed with her, imagining my grandma tricking the police with a song. But not all the stories were funny. She told me about the fear, about the friends she lost, about the times she had to run. Her voice grew quiet. She spoke of the hope that kept them going, the belief that they could make the world a better place, a fairer place. She wasn't just singing love songs in those clubs, she was singing songs of change, songs of revolution. Her voice was her instrument, but it was also her weapon. A weapon for peace, a weapon for equality. I listened, completely captivated. This wasn't a story from a history book. This was my grandma's life. It was real and it was incredible. As the summer days went on, the house was no longer quiet. It was filled with stories. Grandma Rose and I spent hours talking. She would put on old jazz records, Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, and she would tell me about the nights she shared a stage with famous musicians. She taught me how to listen to the music, to hear the stories in the notes, the sadness, the joy, the hope. The ticking clock on the wall didn't bother me anymore. It was just keeping time with the rhythm of her memories. The summer I thought would be so boring had become the most exciting one of my life. My perspective had completely shifted. I saw her differently now. When she was kneading dough in the kitchen, I didn't just see Grandma, I saw the strong hands that held protest signs. When she hummed a little tune in the garden, I heard the shadow of Rosie Blue's powerful voice. She was a living piece of history, a hero who had fought for the world I lived in today. I felt a new connection to her, a deep respect. It was more than just love for my grandma. It was awe. She was brave and smart and cool. So much cooler than I ever could have imagined. I was proud, so incredibly proud to be her grandchild. One afternoon I asked her if she ever missed it, being Rosie Blue. She looked out at her garden, at the bright red tomatoes and the tall sunflowers. Sometimes, she said softly, but every part of life is a different song. That was a fast, loud song. This is a quiet, peaceful one. Both are beautiful. She taught me that people are not just one thing. They are full of different stories, different songs. You just have to be willing to listen. She showed me that a quiet life doesn't mean a small life. Her past was big and loud and important, and it lived inside her still. On my last day, as I packed my suitcase, I felt a pang of sadness. I didn't want to leave. This house was no longer a boring place. It was a place of magic, of history, of love. Grandma gave me one of the old ticket stubs from the Blue Note Club. A little piece of Rosie Blue to take with you, she said. I put it in my pocket. It felt like a medal. I was not the same person who had arrived at her door 3 months ago. I was leaving with more than just memories of good cookies. I was leaving with a legacy, a story of courage to carry with me. My grandma's story was now a part of my own, and I knew I would never forget the summer I discovered her secret life.